Can you briefly explain what a rooming house is and how it differs from traditional rental properties? Because it's a very unique way of investing.
So a rooming house is an actual building class, right? A 1B building class. You're allowed to have multiple tenants. If you go over five, then it falls into, say, for example, a boarding house class, which is a typically a class 3 build or, just higher standards. So the reason why we entered into the rooming space was because it's sort of in between. I've always wanted to do multi-rental, right? I'm from Sydney. Housing is a problem everywhere, right? And one of my first projects I want to do was a new generation boarding house in New South Wales. Right? So different states have different terminology, but basically same, right? And it was such a hassle to get there. Not a hassle. It was such a challenge from a planning and legal perspective because it's very political in Sydney. Planning is very political, whereas rooming houses in Brisbane, it's kind of more streamlined. There are ways to get approval faster. So no matter what you guys say about how planning is in Queensland, come to Sydney. You're shocked. Like, it's crazy. The stuff they make up. I've got some war stories, like things that have happened in the past, and I'm like, I'm never doing a project in Sydney. I'm only now doing my first DA for the very first time, like after how many years? It's only because I live there. Like, I have to. It's my
Yeah.
PPR. But otherwise, I'd avoid it. Yeah.
So with a rooming house, so basically there's certain rules and regulations. Obviously, I'm assuming that you got to build to. But if we have the viewers that just think about, okay, so if you think of a traditional house that has one kitchen, one living room, and 4 or 5 bedrooms, right? Like a larger home. Basically, what you're doing is building something similar to that, right? But you can actually rent each individual room legally for a higher dollar amount than you would be able to just rent it as a regular house to a family.
Yes. The key word there was legally, right?
Yes.
We want to follow the rules. We don't want to break any rules, and that's why that's the appeal of rooming houses in Queensland. So we're fully compliant. We get the 1B certificate. I think it's the Form 12 or something like that, and we can take that to the insurer, and the insurer are happy to insure this asset. So it's something that's scalable. And as you said, it is something where we can actually rent to individuals or separate individuals, multiple tenants, and everyone kind of keeps themselves. There is a common kitchen. However, it's not really, they don't really use it because single occupant, you're not going to cook up a meal for yourself, and there's always a kitchenette in their own studio anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, and what's driving the demand for this type of housing at the moment, right? Like, obviously, we know that there's a housing crisis at the moment, but where's the demand coming from, and who's actually renting these I guess rooms out, right? Because I know there's a lot of studio apartments that you can rent as an example in an apartment building, but the rooming housing, I didn't really hear about it until we really started unemployable property and really started to get a better understanding. I've heard of people going, all right, I'm going to rent a property out and I'm going to get a sublet clause or sometimes not have a sublet clause. And I'm then going to rent it for $600 a week. And I'm going to then rent it to 4 college students or 4 university students illegally, right? Each room for 4 or 500 bucks and go on their way. So where's that demand coming from, and why are people still doing what I just explained?
So the typical tenant are working Australians. We don't target students. Generally, students have their like a government subsidized accommodation or something. We tend to avoid those places because they're really expensive because they're appealing to people who want to operate or build student accommodation. So it's just general Australian. We used to think that it was women over a certain age, changing demographic of Australia, but it's actually people across the board. Pensioners actually really like it because there's that set utility charges are built into their rent, so they don't have to worry about that. They know it's consistent. We've got young Australians who are moving out of home for the first time, and generally it's more affordable than them renting somewhere else. So really, what we're pitching, like where we're finding the demand is from those who don't want to share a house with somebody else. Those share houses that you just referenced. So they don't have to share the bathroom. They don't have to share the kitchen. They have their own private, space,
Mm.
studio, whatever you want to call it. So that's generally the appeal for people. The utilities, the bills from a financial perspective, and also that privacy, and you have your own amenities.
So each individual room has its own ensuite
Yes,
and it has its own kitchenette, like you said
kitchenette.
prior. Yeah.
Yeah.